Welcome to this episode of the Talent Forge, where we are shaping the future of talent development. I am joined today by special guest Mandy Bowsmith. Welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here to talk today about talent and HR stuff and leadership stuff.
Love it. So glad that you were able to join us. Can you start by maybe telling our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into this talent development space?
Sure. I am I don't know if you want to call it a veteran, but I have been in human resources for over 24 years in government. So I
Hmm.
started my career in municipal government at the city of Las Vegas in Nevada.
That had to
And
be fun.
it was interesting. Well, I was born and raised in Vegas, so but City of Las Vegas is certainly an interesting municipality. There's a lot going on within the city jurisdiction. And I started my career as a temporary file clerk in the workers' compensation section in HR and worked my way up. I have been an HR director in a city setting, and I've also been the head of human resources in a state setting. And recently, I made a transition and opened my own coaching and consulting firm where I'm focused on government leaders, but leadership in general, trying to bring leadership to the masses, if
I
you
I
will.
love that. No, that's incredible. Bringing leadership to the masses.
Mhm.
So I want to dig in on something that you said there because one of the things, when general people think of HR, they think of the, hey, I need you to come down to my office, right? Like they think
Right.
of who's processing my payroll. And one of the things that I've learned over the course of my career is that sometimes the actual aspects of HR and the aspects of talent development are very, very separated. And
Mhm.
sometimes talent is under HR, sometimes it's completely separate.
Yeah.
You are navigating a space where you've been in the HR or the director of HR positions and also are doing talent development. Can you
Mhm.
maybe speak to that just a little bit? What's that transition look like? Or was it always sort of a natural thing for you to kind of have a foot in both of those worlds? What does that look like for Mandy?
Actually, the funny thing is early in my career, so at City of Las Vegas, the training and development group is under human resources. So
Okay.
to me, it's natural for that to be the place that it lives, and it's weird when it's external from from human resources. But it seems to me that human resources as a discipline and as a department is an organization's only one true internal services department, right? This is the department that is set up and is supposed to be the one that employees can lean on for help to get questions answered, hey, I don't know about my health insurance. What about this? Or hey, can I take this class or whatever? And HR is supposed to be the people who help employees, get rid of those little worries so they can go off and do the job that they were hired to do. A lot of times though, and over the course of my career, it's been true. HR has a bad rap because the perception is that we are the bad guys. Because
You're
a
the
lot of
stick.
times, right,
Yeah.
we're the bad cop, right? And part of that, I will offer, part of that is a leadership problem
Mm.
because a lot of what we see are people who are in positions of leadership who are not comfortable with conflict. They're not comfortable with conflict resolution and they don't have those skills. And so they would rather push it off onto an HR person to, do the dirty work per se,
Yeah.
rather than trying to handle the situation themselves. And there's a lot of nuance, of course, to human resource. Nothing we do is black and white. It is 7 million shades of gray. Every situation you can have the same set of facts and have a completely different situation in front of you. And the variable there is the human, right?
Absolutely.
One of the things in Blue Note Resources, which is the firm that I opened, one of my goals, along with leadership and helping leaders become more human leaders, is putting the humanity back in human resources, showing people that human resources is not it's not the place where somebody goes when they're in trouble. It's not the principal's office, right? It's
Yep.
it's a place where you can go and get questions answered. It's also a place where you can be listened to. I've learned that 9 times out of 10 you have a problem employee and they're just not performing, something is going on. usually they just want to be listened to. Something is happening, right? Either something with a
Yeah.
coworker, something with, say, software they're using, something with a project they're working on. They just want to be listened to. And
Yeah.
if you give them 20 minutes of your time, they typically, it course corrects itself, right? So putting the humanity back in HR and back in leadership is how I believe we can help. Number one, help our employees to do the best that they can do every day for whatever organization we're talking about. But also number two, to really bring a sense of belonging and understanding to employees in an organization, because you spend most of your time at work. Why not make it a place where people understand how they fit, where people understand what they're contributing to the bottom line, and where they're happy to spend most of their day.
Well, and I love what you're bringing up there, right? Because connection is one of the things that we all need to find at work. And we don't always think about it that way. But if we don't feel connected, valued, seen, we disengage, we pull
Mm-hmm.
back. Eventually, we become disgruntled. And eventually, we say, hey, I'm not part of this tribe anymore. And we leave. And it's a
Yep,
huge issue right now,
it
with
is.
quiet quitting, disengagement, and turnover. I mean, these are things that big companies, every single company that I'm working with, this is what keeps their leadership up at night. And I want to
Yeah.
go back to what you said about this being a challenge with leadership, because I think that's a really important piece to kind of go on here. How have you, and let's take this one more step down the road.
Okay.
You're right. And I know this, and you know this, and any of our listeners in the HR world know this. It is a difficult transition to get employees to say, no, I'm actually here to help you. I truly believe that people that are coming into HR, they want to help people. They don't want to be the stick per se. They don't want to be the enforcer, the gatekeeper, or anything else. But that's often, you're right, they get pigeonholed into that position.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the people that I've ever interacted with in HR are truly committed, caring people that want to see both the team, the people individually, and the organization thrive and survive, and to be a
Right.
place that everybody wants to work at. I don't think
Right.
anybody's ever, joined HR twisting their mustache, sitting in the back going, how can I really screw over my employees today?
Right. Yeah.
So, despite all of that, because there is this sort of balance of having to sometimes play that role of the bad cop, and in other cases going, hey, come to this training or come to this development opportunity, and people going, okay, you just were the person that had to threaten me four
Right.
minutes ago, and now you want me to come to the party
Right.
now? Uh,
Right.
how did you balance that? How did you sort of create the conditions of trust and connection amongst the people to say, okay, yeah, it's almost like, the parent that they can discipline you, but they're also going to show you that love and kindness and care. How did you navigate that? Because I think that's going to be something really interesting to any of our HR folks listening.
For myself, and people have told me that I am not normal. So
Me
please
too,
keep
my
that in
entire
mind.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for myself, I have a very simple philosophy in terms of human resources and in terms of how I work. And it's difficult in government, right? But my philosophy is do what's right, not what's easy. Because if it's easy, I can guarantee you in government, it ain't right, right? Just the way
Sure.
that government is set up, everything is a slog, everything is hard. And so if
Funny.
you have found something to do that's easy, it's wrong, right?
Mandy, in a past life, it really feels like a past life at this point in time. I was an elected official in my local municipality of 50,000 people, and I 1000% agree with you. If it's easy, so you miss something.
Yes,
Somewhere along
something
the
is
way,
wrong.
you miss
Yeah.
something. So I love
And
that. Keep going.
yeah, no, people laugh at me, but it's true, right? Do what's
Yeah.
right, not what's easy. But not only that, I believe wholly in authenticity. And I'll tell you, Jay, it took me a while to come to who my authentic self was as an HR professional, but I'm a straight shooter. When people work with me, they know that what they're going to get from me is the truth. They're going to get the truth. They're going to get exactly what's going on. And but they're going to get it in a way that's respectful and that is, and it wasn't always kind either, right? Like, because sometimes you do have to be sort of hard-nosed about what's happening. But I I was the kind of leader within the organization where people knew exactly what they were going to get from me. So if they came to me to ask me a question, or if they wanted to know, hey, why am I getting this poor performance report? They knew I was going to give them the straight dope every time. And what
I'm
that
I,
bought me
I
was
I'm gonna
credit.
I'm gonna get something that you said there real quick, because you mentioned that it might not be kind, but I think that is kind. And I'm gonna lean straight into Brene Brown's words on this.
Sure.
Clear is kind,
Yes.
unclear is unkind.
Yes.
And while it may be direct, or while it may be hard to hear, the fact that you're not sugar, I think that is a kindness. And I think that speaks a lot to your character, Mandy, because when we are in that situation where it is easier for us to say, gosh, I could sugarcoat this, I could make this a little lighter, or I'm going to have to tell you, hey, Jay, you've got a booger on your nose. You're
Right.
probably going to want to fix that. That may
Right.
not feel kind to tell me, but trust me, in my heart of hearts, I need to know this,
Right.
And
Right.
so please
Yeah.
continue on that. But I really think that that's important. And I think it's important for our audience. Being clear is an act of kindness. And you
Absolutely.
can do that in an authentic way, in a kind way, right? We don't have to come in there with a bat of
Right.
truth.
Right. And I think that
But
that's
yeah,
one of the things in terms of leadership that there are all these myths, right? Right. There's all this mythos surrounding what a leader is, who a leader is, what kind of person can be a leader. And, with all due respect to the establishment, I think it's bull. Because I think that anybody can be a leader. I think that anybody can learn the concepts of being a leader. In my own leadership role, I tried my best to, number one, connect with everybody who was a subordinate to me, understand who they were, how they fit in the puzzle of the organization, and what they did. Because then I understood what was going on. And if there were problems, let's say in payroll, I was over payroll. If there were problems in payroll, I could have a better understanding of what those problems were and then be able to relay them to, let's say, a customer that was having a hard time. I mean,
mhm,
one of the things that I did, and this sounds so sort of silly, and I had peers of mine tell me that it was a poor choice to do this, but I spent a week as the front desk person in payroll, answering the phone, doing the mail, trying to distribute the stuff. And the reason was twofold. Number one, because they were short staffed and they just needed to get payroll out. And I was trying to help lighten the load in any way I could, right? The second part was then I understood. I understood the volume of phone calls they get. I understood the volume of snail mail they get. I understood the volume of email. And and then I could fight for them with my bosses
sure.
about, we need more people, we need more resources, we need this, we need that, right? If you're a leader who refuses to get in the trenches with your people and understand what your teams are really doing, you're not a leader. You're just somebody collecting a paycheck in a position of faux power. And I think that that's one of the things that is really important for me to show in the work that I'm doing now, in some classes that I'm creating, is leadership is not where you went to college. Leadership is not the clothes you wear. Leadership is not power. It's not authority.
Love that.
It is communication. It is clarity. And it is reasonable compassion for the people who work for you. And if you show your team clarity, if you are clear in your vision, if you are clear in where the organization is going, and you're clear in how they fit, and you can articulate that, and you're communicating with them as much as possible and giving them as much information as they're going to need to do their jobs and do it well and to feel like they're part of what's going on. And if you are reasonably compassionate about when things come up, because we all have kids, we all have parents, we all have things that come up in life, people will follow you anywhere you lead.
There's so much to unpack there, Mandy, and incredibly stated. First, I want to acknowledge the fact that you went to the front lines because I this is something. Have you ever heard of the concept of a Gemba walk? Gemba. It's a Japanese philosophy.
Hmm, okay.
This is one of the things that I actually ask a lot of leaders to do, especially in the manufacturing side of things. And what it is it's literally getting out onto the floor and walking the floor and being with each of the employees, spending time at their station, not overseeing them, not looking over their shoulder, but trying to understand what does your job look like? What are the challenges that you're facing? And getting out there and actually seeing what is happening in those different positions. The fact that
Right.
you did that and sat in that position for a week, what kind of empathy that must have generated to say, hey, I just walked a mile in your shoes. I get it. Let me have some conversation. Or I just walked a mile in your shoes, and maybe there's some things that we could improve on this side that would help you be more effective. But now
Hmm.
you've got that kind of position of credibility by leading by example. So we're going to go down this leadership pathway, but I really appreciate that you said that. When I was working, I used to be a member. I guess I'm an alumni member. I've aged out, but the Junior Chamber International, which services young leaders between the ages of 18 and 40, I was the local chapter president, and we were launching a community garden. And I remember the supervisor had come out at that time and was like, "Jay, like I thought you were leading this project," and I'm sitting there and I'm fingers in the dirt and I'm digging everything up and everything else. And I was like, I am.
Hmm.
And they were like, well, why aren't you kind of like overseeing this? I was like, well, people know what to do. They've been decentralized. They have their decision-making capacity. So
Right.
I'm needed here and I'm going to get my hands dirty. And it was funny because the supervisor kind of like sat down and got down on their knees and started doing the same thing that I was doing.
Right.
But I always believed that as the leader, I was going to be the last one to set down the rake and I was going to
Hmm.
be the first one to pick up the bag. You know, if
Yep.
I could do that, then I could lead with a place of empathy and authenticity that I wasn't going to ask somebody to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. So I
Exactly.
love that you got in there.
Exactly.
Let's talk about leadership. Let's get into this because you are launching a program for every person,
Hmm.
anybody out there. You had mentioned earlier, sort of leadership for the masses. I really love that. You should make that your
Yeah.
slogan.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
let's talk about that. What inspired you to think about creating programs and I love the concept because I agree, everybody is a leader of their own lives, is a leader of their own station, is a leader of their own family. And that doesn't matter what gender, what title, what role, you can be a leader if you take ownership. So
Hmm.
what inspired you to go down this pathway to really kind of focus on, because you see a lot of leadership programs, they're focused on executive teams and they're focused
Right.
on this, but
Right.
what inspired this?
You, it really comes down to the experiences that I had. And part of it, being a government kid, right? Being an HR kid in government, um, government waxes and wanes, right? With especially municipal government, with and in Nevada in particular, it has a lot to do with property revenues, and when you're in city of Las Vegas, there are a lot of casinos, and there's taxes that go along with the casinos, and if the casinos are doing well, then the city does well in terms of revenue and taxes and things like that. But in downtimes, right, you don't do so well. What's the first thing that every organization cuts when things start to go a little south? Training,
Training. And
professional
then after
development.
that, marketing. And by the
And
way,
then,
my company does training and marketing. So
right,
yeah,
exactly. And and then if you get that money back, because it's not always a guarantee that you're going to get that money back in the next budget cycle, but if you get that money back, then it seems to be cherry picked about who is allowed to access those funds. Who are we going to choose? Because it's kind of like that weird popularity contest, right? Who are we going to choose to go take the leadership training? And what's funny is I have my oldest son is a freshman in high school this year. And I was thinking about my high school experience and like, how I could try to help him have a great time in high school. And I was also thinking about this leadership thing because I wanted to also do something that's aimed more at his age group.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, wait a minute, I can remember the student council kids in high school, they got leadership training, but
Yep.
nobody else did. Right. So
Mhm.
if you wanted to be a part of this specific group, you got the training, but it wasn't a normal curricular lesson that was taught. You didn't get it in English class, you didn't get it in history class, you didn't get it
Right.
in government, surprisingly. And I thought, well, why is that? And then I thought further, well, that's been the way it's been throughout my whole professional career as well, right? The people are identified for one reason or another, and they're put forward as leaders. And so we groom them, and everybody else sort of is back here. But what I've also noticed is that through my own sort of journey and trying to figure out who I was and what kind of a professional I was and what I wanted to do, I'm the kind of person who I will pay for my own training because I love learning. I love
Mhm.
academia. I love learning. Knowledge is like my thing. But there are a lot of people, especially government workers, believe it or not, that can't afford $250 for a webinar. They can't afford $300 for some course. And
Sure.
they're never going to have a Harvard MBA, but that does not mean that they are not good leadership material. And perhaps that's shown in their daily work with their peers,
Yeah.
right? Perhaps that's shown on projects. Perhaps that's shown even like in like your fund committee or your birthday committee or your whatever your organization has. People are leaders in different ways, and it manifests itself in different ways. So if we give people the tools, if they're accessible, then pardon me, then they can lead. My idea is to create courses, online courses, for people that are both accessible because they're online and affordable, because that affordability factor is really important. You know, a lot
Those
of people with
barriers.
families don't have
Yeah.
$350 to throw around for a leadership course.
Yep.
So I apologize. My goodness.
Oh, that's okay.
Um, so that's what I'm trying to do, is build accessible, affordable leadership for everybody, for the masses. Anybody can take the course. There are no prerequisites. And what I'm looking for are people who want to learn, and people who maybe they have a desire to lead, or maybe they take my course and they're like, I'm not doing that. That's perfectly good too,
Hey,
right? But at least
I, I I love that, and here's part of the reason why is one of my absolute favorite things in the world, and this is having I served as an international vice president for JCI actually, and I was assigned to Europe, and I remember being I spent 140 days traveling across the Nordic countries and the Baltic countries, giving talks and doing leadership training, etc. And the number of times that I heard somebody come to me and say, "Well, I'm not a leader." And I'm just like, "Really? Let's have a conversation. Let's unpack
right,
that. Let what makes a leader then? What does it look like and how does that function? And
right,
what designates you not being a leader and not comfortable with leadership?" And literally by the time that we finished some of these conversations, and I pointed out, "Hey, you did this. You made these decisions. You did that. You did X, Y, and Z. You're doing this.
right.
Isn't that leadership? Isn't that the kind of leadership that you would like?" And
Mhm.
you could see this little light go off.
Yeah,
One of the questions that I'm going to come back to, I'm going to mention one other thing, but I'm going to come back to, how will you maybe support people that have that mentality of, "Oh, I'm not a leader. These courses aren't going to be for me." So that's the question I'm going to stick with. But I do want to go back to something else that you said, and I think it's so important. Right now, I am running the Elite Training Academy, which is a coaching program for trainers and coaches. And one of the big things that I'm trying to get through and successfully getting through is the mindset of training is a luxury in the mind of leadership.
yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
and when you're a trainer, That's hard to swallow. I am a
Yeah.
trainer. I've been
Yep.
training for 20 years. That's hard to swallow. I love
Yeah.
learning too, Mandy. I
Yeah.
absolutely will sign up to anything that I can. I'm certified in 100 things. I do certifications. I do coachings with other trainers. And I love learning and I just love the experience of it. I also had to shift the mindset of not everybody loves learning. Learning
Mm-hmm.
is hard, learning
Mm-hmm.
is change, learning is
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Yeah.
But when we come into a space and we think, well, training is important and learning is something that everybody loves, when we start to shift that mindset and realize, no, training is the first thing to get cut because the leader is going to look and say, I can either cut the training program or I'm going to have to cut 2 employees.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a tough decision that they have to make, but
Yeah.
that is really what in many organizations, training is a luxury. And if you're a trainer or an HR person responsible for talent development, we need to think like that because we
Yeah.
need to be showing the return on investment of putting money into our people, paying for those $250 webinars, bringing in that speaker, bringing in that knowledge base, et cetera. So I
Right.
love that you brought that up because I mean it is so consistent with the things that I'm trying to convey. It's really refreshing to hear somebody go, "Yep, hey, that's the first thing to go." And I am literally seeing that
Yeah.
happening. Actually, this is kind of a scary trend. I'm seeing that happening now in a lot of organizations of them saying, "Our budget's been cut for the end of the
Oh, I'm
year.
sure.
We've put a pause on all of our training
Yeah.
programs until."
People are getting scared again. Yeah.
Yep,
You know,
exactly.
one of the things, so in government I apologize. I don't really know how it works in private sector, but I'm sure it's very similar. In government, when let's say I asked for a new position as the HR director, um, I would have to justify the reason that I want that position, right? So they're going to do A, B, C, and D, blah, blah, blah. And then there are costs associated, right? So there's the base salary that the individual would earn. And then there are fringe costs, right? Like group health insurance and workers' compensation insurance and, FICA and all that stuff that's factored in. My argument is, okay, stop budgeting for training as a separate line item. Put it in your person cost. That
Yep.
is what it costs for that human. Salary, professional development, fringe. It's already there. It can't be cut. And so each individual has X amount of money per fiscal year to engage in professional development. Now, there are going to be people who are like, nope, I come to
I'm
work, I
good.
do my job, I go home, I got nothing.
Yep.
Fine. That's fine. But if you do it that way, if that's the way you budget, uh, so it's rolled into the person cost, then it's not something that can be cut.
Yep.
And that's something that I've been advocating for a number of years now in terms of how in my past professional positions, look, roll it into the person number, right? Because what we're asking for what we're asking for is a drop in its budget dust, right?
Mhm.
In comparison to a state budget or a city budget, or even, what about
You're
Apple?
talking millions of dollars,
Right?
millions of
We're
dollars.
talking
Yeah.
about specks of dust for professional development. And and there still is this, we perpetuate it. I think we perpetuate the myth of what leadership looks like because that's what it looks like on the national scale. That's what we see in the news, right? We
Yep.
see usually older men, they're usually Caucasian, they're usually in suits, right? Telling us what we should think, how we should feel, those kinds of things. And they're assuming what we equate with a leadership role. And
Mhm.
and I'm part of my message is part of the reason that we dress up those folks is because they're not leaders. They look good, but they're not leaders, right? And so a leader doesn't have to look like that. They don't have to have an MBA. They don't even have to have a bachelor's degree, in fact, right? Do you care? Do you care about what you're doing? Do you care about your team? Do you care about the end result? And that end result can be replicated so that you can do the business that you have to do. In government, our business is helping our constituency, right?
Yep.
Whatever that looks like. The best person for a leadership role is usually not the person they put into that role. Because in government, we have civil service, we have certain, merit-based things. The guy who's been a plumber for 30 years, he's been an amazing plumber. It's great. But just because he's the last guy standing doesn't mean he should be in charge of your public works department now, right?
Mandy, you're so spot on, and I think it's so important. When the way that we perceive leadership, I think is really interesting. Now, I
Yeah.
grew up
Yeah.
on the lower middle class rung. I wasn't quite poverty, but definitely a family of five siblings. My dad was a tool and die maker. Sometimes the industry was great, sometimes not so great. My mom worked in
Hmm.
a lunchroom to, add value. I'm first generation college, and I had no intention of going to college.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting, though, that even through my development, I found myself being the president of the debate team, the captain of my hockey team, and so on and
Sure.
so forth. And there was points and times where everybody on my hockey team was driving something like a Lexus or a BMW, and
Hmm.
there's my 1989 Chevrolet Nova with the doors falling off. And it's just like, but they still looked at me as their leader. And I think that it's what you're speaking to is behavior, is
Yes.
because of showing up in a particular way, putting the needs of the team ahead of my own,
Yeah.
making sure that you see those different pieces. So there are people out there that exhibit those qualities, and then they look at themselves and go, but I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader.
Right.
And they
Right.
do literally
Right.
everything that a leader should be doing.
Yeah.
I know we're nearing the end of our time here for our episode, but I'd love for you to dig in on that a little bit. How do you get them to see themselves as a leader? And then how would they benefit from, maybe taking some of these types of courses or developing that skills or
Sure.
those behaviors?
So the first thing I would say is if you have somebody who you're seeing has leadership qualities and they seem to shy away from them, give them a little more leadership responsibility. See what they do with it, right? Because some people do want to lead, they just don't know how to get into it,
Or don't
and
have the confidence
or they don't
to
have the
even step
confidence.
in. Yeah,
Right.
sure.
So I had somebody that I'm thinking of right now that I gave her a little more responsibility, pushed her, just gently nudged her in that direction, and she just blew it out of the park because it was instinctual, right? And I think that that's something to acknowledge too. You're you're being the president of the club or the captain of the hockey team and things like that. Some people have natural charisma and people are drawn to them and they're able to lead because there's a natural ability. Not everybody has that natural ability. And so if you have somebody that you see is taking on leadership roles, like maybe they're the one in meetings that, when you're having a group meeting and you're trying to get a team update, they're the one that always talks, right? Like or the one that's always prompting, the one that always talks,
Yeah.
you can see. Start throwing things at them. Start talking to them about where do they see themselves in the organization in 5 years? What do they see themselves doing? Have they ever thought about a leadership role? And if not, why? Right? Is it because there's a fear? Is it because you feel like you may be rejected? Because that's always a big fear for us as humans. The other thing is then I would start to work with them and filter some of the leadership things. When you're in a leadership role, you tend to get a lot of newsletters and a lot of articles sent to you by companies who want your business and stuff. I filter those to that person. Hey, take a look at this. Let's have a cup of coffee and talk about
Love that.
what you think about this. The other thing that I want to say, this sort of goes back to the idea of rolling professional development costs into the person cost. In HR in America, in the United States, we have certain mandatory courses that by federal law, a new
Mhm.
employee has to take drug alcohol awareness, right?
Sure.
They have to take sexual harassment prevention, right, and awareness courses. They usually have to take some kind of onboarding and policy procedure, whatever. make a leadership course part of
A
the
requirement.
mandatory onboarding
Yep.
requirements.
Yep.
Because then what you're doing is you're setting that employee up for success because they're understanding the leadership philosophy of the organization, number one. They understand the words you use to articulate that philosophy, and they can make decisions. Wow, I
Huge.
I might be able to
Huge.
be a leader. I would like to pursue this, and give them the tools to be able to approach their supervisors and managers to say, hey, I think I want to take more leadership courses because I think this is something I can do, and I can translate this into my everyday work with my team, and this can be a better place. So to address the question before, just sort of to wrap that up, engage in dialogue, right? One of the things that I used to do was I had 15-minute every week with my immediate circle, 15 minutes a week. We don't have to talk about work. We can talk about your kid's soccer game. I don't care, but we're connecting one-on-one.
Yes.
We are
Yes. Yes.
connecting and we're relating to each other. And I, a lot of HR professionals will tell you not to give too much personal. In fact, I just read an article from Business Insider that an HR professional said, don't share too much personal information with your coworkers or with your teams. Yes, I get that. But you know what? People want to know, like, they want to know that I have 3 sons. They
Yep.
want to know that my kids play soccer and lacrosse, and they want to ask me, hey, how was the lacrosse game this weekend? Right? And they want me to ask them, hey, how was your son's baseball game this weekend? How was your daughter's baseball game this weekend? They want
People
that
want
engagement from
connection.
you.
They want
Yes,
connection. And
especially in a
and
post-COVID
generally,
environment.
and here's what I have seen. If I take a group of 100 employees, of course you're going to have a couple that are like, I don't need to know anything about anybody at work and blah 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 blah. When I see that, I literally will look at that person and just think to myself, what is it that they are uncomfortable with being
Yes.
vulnerable about? Because
Yeah.
that's the person inside of that organization that is
Mhm.
going to struggle, that is going to be sometimes the center of conflict when you
Yes.
have vulnerability or shared
Yes.
vulnerabilities with each other.
Yes.
And I'm not saying go out and tell all of the dirty details of your life, but I
No,
mean,
no.
being authentic and being a
Yes.
human and connecting at that
Yes.
human level,
Yes.
they need to
Reasonable
know
compassion.
exactly,
Reasonable
exactly.
compassion. And really it, it's that authenticity, and that, oh, Mandy knows who I am.
Yep.
Mandy cares about me. And
Mandy's not looking at me like a number that is
right.
somebody that can be cut the first time that budget cut comes along.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. And it's uncomfortable. For a lot of people, it's uncomfortable because there's a certain mindset that typically lends to leadership, at
Yep.
least historically. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly in some cutthroat businesses, absolutely. But the truth is, we are humans. We are not robots. And even with AI, we're still going to be
Not yet.
humans
That's right.
doing the stuff, right?
That's right.
You have got to bring humanity, and you have got to let people know that they matter within an organization, and that they matter to you, because that is the number one thing. If somebody knows they matter, if somebody knows you care as a leader, they're go I said it before, they're gonna follow you anywhere. They're gonna do 110% for you every single day.
Powerful insight, Mandy. Uh, how would our audience, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn about these programs, how should they reach out to you?
I I would love to talk to anybody who wants to talk about this. I would certainly love to be able to. I also do in-person training. I'm working on this asynchronous course. I do coaching. I do consulting. You can find me at bluenoteresources.com. I'm on Twitter under Blue Note Resources, and I'm also on Facebook under Blue Note Resources.
Amazing, Mandy. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It has been an absolute pleasure. I know this is a little bit longer episode, but I thought it was so powerful that we just needed to dig in on some of those issues. So thank you for your time and energy for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it very much.
My absolute pleasure. So, and thank you, audience, for listening to this episode of the Talent Forge, where we are shaping the future of talent development.